Hello, this is Michael Hexter, and welcome to Politics 2100 here on YouTube. So this episode I'm calling Left and Right Fight Over the Nature of quote-unquote True Sociopathy Becomes Core Belief of Each Wing. So I am using the paradigm of sociopathy, which comes from psychology, and in particular, it's a part of psychology that is most relevant to forensic psychology, to the psychology of criminality, but it's also just part of the general nosology of different mental conditions or disturbances, and it's called formally antisocial personality disorder, but it's more informally called sociopathy. And it can be used in a sort of a more generalized way, not just diagnosing particular people. And I am referring to that in a more generalized way here, sort of as a social phenomenon, as well as maybe something that's about individual psychology, so to speak, contained, you could say, within an individual, within their minds, with the way they think, so forth and so on, how they feel, how they act. But anyway, I am recasting politics and the dispute between the left and the right wing as a dispute over what is real sociopathy. And I believe this is helpful and enlightening, and also gives us a window into the problem also, and I'm not going to focus on that in this video, but in another one about crime and about what to do about crime and criminality in society. So anyway, the left, the left, let me start with the left. So the left thinks of sociopathy. They don't use the word sociopathy, but the implication is what they're saying is what is wrong with society systematically, or where the evil lies, or where the evildoers are. Evil, the wrongdoers, okay? Evil is sort of a religiously tinged word. Let's say where the wrongdoers are, where individuals are committing crimes, okay, is at the top of society. And that top, or that in most of the tradition of Marxism or post-Marxism, is the capitalist class, the owners of the means of production, the investor class, the rich people, the people who have gained the most advantage from the capitalist society, and those are the people who are more likely, or are in total, are entirely, it depends on how dogmatic you are, entirely beset with antisocial actions and behaviors, that they have nothing, they have no choice but to act antisocially because they own capital, because they're part of the capitalist class. So, and they oppress the poor, oppress the working class in particular, extract from them, exploit from them their labor, and immiserate them. And you can say, in more generalized theories of imperialism, and that they also exploit the world more generally, and they attempt to keep through their control of politics and politicians, and the state, their capture of capitalist states, to use the instruments of governments to quasi-enslave, or enslave via not directly enslaved. So slavery is illegal in most parts of the world, though there are some parts of the world where it's still practiced. But anyway, they create conditions which force people to exploit either their labor, or exploit the natural resources of their country, and at a low cost to the capitalists, but at a high social cost to the people in other countries, and so forth and so on. So in any case, this is all the evil in society. So this is where the evil comes from a left-wing perspective. And also, if we were talking about crime, now I said I wasn't going to cover crime specifically in this video, but I'll mention it as one aspect of this, or let's say the complexity of what I think is the reality of crime. I'll leave that for another video. But in terms of ideology, the left thinks of criminality on a sort of street criminality as being caused by this system of exploitation and by impoverishment of people. So the economic conditions militate that people on the lower end of the spectrum commit more crimes. So their social circumstances are what need to be addressed to change or to reduce crime. And so the that and I'm talking about street crime and talking about what we call blue collar criminality, okay, or the criminality that's more associated with poor people, or people who work with their hands in some form or another, and that is distinguished from white collar criminality. And you could say that the particular focus of the left, in particular the post-Marxist left or the Marxist or post-Marxist left, and just also as a tendency within, let's say, the left, even though people don't identify with Marxism much anymore, and even though the right is criticizing the left as being Marxist and so on and so on, I'm not trying to add to that by saying this, but anyway, but some of the fundamental idea of a society that it's organized against ordinary people, against working people, and therefore sometimes some working people, some poor people choose to commit violence against other often poor people and so forth and so on. So, but in any case, the rationale, the reason for that in the left-wing perspective, where the sociopathy comes from, is from the organization of society overall, and not from individual choices of individuals who do those crimes. And so anyway, and in the video I just did, I think I didn't make clear this distinction of what I'm saying when I talked about the normalization of sociopathy by the GOP. The GOP is normalizing mostly white collar criminality or sociopathy, and especially because of Trump, who is of that type of person. So the con man, the person who, but also beyond the con man, using committing certain types of political violence and violence against the institutions of the state for personal gain more than anything else. So that they are not revolutionaries in the sense of trying to break down the system in order to build a new one, or if the new one they were going to build is really they're going to just use the parts of the existing system for their own benefit, or that's the goal that they have. At least this is in my perception, is sort of from a left perspective, what they're doing, and not just, I don't think it's not just a left perspective. I think from a neutral perspective, that's really their plan, their stated plans. They literally want to, create, take over the state and use it for their own sectoral and personal power needs, and not really for many other people other than their inner circles, or maybe a certain protected minority of the population who supports them, their political cronies in some form or another. So anyway, I'm still trying to, so in that video, I didn't make a distinction. So that right wing that I'm talking about that is normalizing criminality, they're not trying to normalize the street criminality, at least the type that isn't the political violence that they celebrate. So the political violence, the use of guns and so forth and so on, the threatening of other people, if those people are of their members of their cult or members of their supposed ethnic group that they are representing, the real Americans, the white Christian people who often are from rural areas, so forth and so on, or who are not necessarily from rural areas, but who can basically, this sort of racialized idea of who the right people are, those people can commit crimes as much as they want, but the other people are so their efforts, what they're trying to do. So I'm moving from the left to the right. So the right sees so sociopathy as being a function of your biological identity, essentially, or your appearance of your biology, so how you look. That is the origin of your of sociopathy, of the evil in society. So the evil in society for the fascist or neo-fascist right is the intrusion of other people into society overall. That society is not a purified, or at least the commanding heights of society, the power structure of society is not a purified white structure, okay, that is white and Christian. And you see this in the way that the GOP has assembled many of their legislatures and so forth and so on, and their administrations of they feel hardly any compunction in having a group picture of 100 people, and maybe there's one or two people who are black or Indian American or so forth and so on. So, but their general representation is of that that the power structure should be of this core group, and the people who are the evil are the people who look different, who are also poor or from out groups, so forth and so on, who appear differently than the supposed norm that they are trying to uphold, the white so this is sort of white nationalism, okay, which is part of, or white supremacy is related to white nationalism, but it's apparently slightly different. I just learned this distinction, or it was clarified to me recently. Anyway, so the idea that the state, the people who are part of the state are these white people, and they are to use any kind of force they like in subduing who they consider to be the real sociopaths, who are often the black people. So it's often anti-black in the United States, but also Hispanic people, people who are considered other in certain areas, Indian people, or Native Americans, indigenous people, and those are the people to be subdued by the state. So anyway, so that dispute of that's an argument, and so anyway, the in terms of crime, in terms of individual acts of crime, the right is always trying to locate and find aspects of actions that happen in a video or whoever it is, or individual case, where they can try to hold up this feature of crime being a source. It comes from urban areas, it comes from the mixture of races, or it becomes from basically brown and black people, are the source of crime. And that's the message that's being it's being broadcast over and over on the media networks that are very, very powerful in shaping the mindset of neo-fascist the neo-fascist movement, the GOP base. And anyway, so this is and the idea is that sociopathy or evil in society comes from this biological root, and and this is part of the biopolitics of the right wing, that they think that it inheres in people, even in their genes, that they are bad, and that leads to all kinds of laws against miscegenation, or the movement toward that. We don't have that yet fully on the agenda of the GOP, but it looks like it's coming in some places. Also, the sense of entitlement by people like the GOP of Alabama or so on and so on to defy the Supreme Court, and their demand that they create another district that's majority black in Alabama to have a more evenly representative in terms of racial congressional representation, even though the GOP would still have the majority in that rejiggered or redrawn district lines. And this is interesting that the ultra-right Supreme Court is even telling the Alabama GOP to to redraw their maps, and they're saying, we won't do it. And so this is and so you have a really, it's in a way like the Civil War, like it's the beginning of, the defiance of the central government by a state, which led eventually to, or is similar to in form to what happened in the 1850s and 1860s in the United States. But anyway, but that comes from beliefs that the idea of a purity or goodness comes from this biological or pseudo-biological idea about a white race, and that the black people are, or Hispanic people, or Latina people are inferior, and they need to be held at arm's length. Now, there are people in this neo-fascist movement who are often, now there are Latina people who are part of that movement, so they are, and there are also even black people who are part of that movement, who nevertheless are the attempt to be the exception that proves the rule, in a sense they are the, you could say, Uncle Toms of the movement. They are highly paid propagandists for. They've made a choice to be propagandists for white supremacy and white nationalism, and also for other reactionary causes like male supremacy, misogyny, so forth and so on. So anyway, but just to use this lens of sociopathy, this dispute over sociopathy gets played over and over again when you talk about individual crime, acts of criminality, and so and also crime and punishment. So the idea that the cops, or and there are many police who I think subscribe to the right wing view, who see that, well, there's no problem in beating or in even killing a black person, because that is, quote unquote, stopping criminality. So I'm not, I'm creating an understanding of this belief system that is pervasive in a lot of different regions of our country, and also among people in their minds and so forth and so on, who, when they think about, there's a lot of racism in our society, and there's also a lot of anti-racism too. So it's not uniformly one is more powerful than the other. But I am locating the logic of it, the belief system behind it, and there's a belief that anyway that sociopathy is coming from the very essence of people, their supposed biological essence, and that there also is no development of you could say, a phenotype. It's all about the genes in a way, and the phenotype being our actual expression of the genes in terms of our actual biology that comes from the food we eat and the environment we live in, and also our psychology, which is part of that phenotype, which is how we actually developed from our genetic materials into beings that are much more various than the expression of simple, and evolving in some sense, evolving as a society, and not just a mutating set of genes that we have and we pass on to next generation, so forth and so on. So anyway, this argument, I think, or this way of looking at these arguments between left and right is elucidating, and it can be helpful. And I'm going to, in a video soon, talk about what I think is a rational discourse of talking about crime and sociopathy and so forth and so on, that is able to, I think, from a left perspective, to make superfluous the arguments of the right. So make them seem even more they are morally reprehensible, but not only morally reprehensible, to make them seem entirely unrealistic. Okay, so it's right now the struggle that I'm describing here in sociopathy, of the difference. Sociopathy, it's like there are individuals who, commit crimes, and some or more have higher propensity to commit crimes because of characteristics of them, but that characteristic is a combination of biological and social factors. So it's multifactorial, and so if you have a discourse that is, I want to create a hegemonic discourse, okay, following Antonio Gramsci, a hegemonic discourse of sociopathy, psychopathy, and how you can look at them from a humanistic perspective, and also that also is congenial, I think, to the transformations in society that we need, and that are desirable in our society to make it a better functioning society, a society that is more just and also more effective in achieving our common goals, goals that we share, that because as humans we actually share a lot more than what divides us. So anyway, I just wanted to put this out there, and please share your thoughts in the comments below, and maybe we can have a discussion there. Please like the video if you thought it had something to offer your thinking about these matters, and also please subscribe to Politics 2100. I look forward to seeing you in the next video.